I'm going to share with you today 5 tips for you to run deep in more poker tournaments. Currently, right now, today, poker tournaments are booming. And to win a lot of money in them, you need to know the fundamentals of poker, and you also need to know when to adjust away from fundamentally sound poker in order to exploit your opponent's mistakes. So we're going to be discussing 5 ways to ensure you are doing that and you have a big edge in poker tournaments today. Tip number 1, to run deep more often, is to get a big stack early. A lot of players think that the goal is to play tight, straightforward poker and to stay out of trouble early in a tournament, which does result in these players making it to the middle stages of the tournament a decent amount of the time. They get to sit at the table for 4 or 5 or 6 hours and they get to hang out, but that is not how you win. You can not only play premium hands, hope to make the nuts, and then hope someone pays you off. Instead, you need to learn to play good, strong GTO poker that will let you get in there and battle so that you can actually accumulate a decently big stack so that you have the ability to push people around in the middle and later stages of the tournament. If you're just hanging out trying to get that double up, yeah, sometimes it'll happen, but more often than not, you're just going to be short stacked in the middle stages of the tournament. Then you're going to have to get lucky to win 4 or 5 all-ins in a row, which is pretty hard to do. I'm just going to show you some game theory optimal pre-flop ranges here that show you the hands you need to be calling and re-raising with. Here we are, 80 big blinds deep versus a 2 big blind raise. Here we are on the button against a cutoff raise. So the cutoff makes it 2 big blinds, and then we're on the button. What should we do? Take a look at all these hands in red that are re-raising. The hands in green are calling and hands in blue are folding. Most people in this situation re-raise pocket 10s and better, ace queen suited and better, and ace king. They get that right. But then they forget all the bluffs. Or if they don't forget all the bluffs, they forget some of them. Notice all the hands in red that are 3-bet bluffing. Ace 8 offsuit, 3-bet bluffs every single time. Notice any 2 cards, 10 or higher offsuit, is 3-bet bluffing about a third of the time or half the time. You need to be doing it. Also take a look at all the suited hands that are bluffing. Lots of low, ace X suited, king X suited, and suited connectors are 3-bet bluffing a decent chunk of the time. Most people instead call the hands if they're decent or fold them if they're on the weaker side, and that is a big mistake. Take a look at the hands that are calling. King 3 suited's calling. A lot of people don't call King 3 suited against a raise on the button. Jack 10 offsuit, Queen 10 offsuit, 8-6 suited, 9-7 suited, 5-4 suited. All these hands get in there and try to play pots in position, which will hopefully allow you to win some pots and build up a stack that will let you push your opponents around later. Here we have the big blind range versus a cutoff raise. So cutoff raise is the 2 big blinds. You're in the big blind. Take a look at now at which hands are 3-betting. Pocket 9s and better, ace jack suited and better, and ace queen offsuit, and king queen for value, for the most part. These are pretty good hands. A lot of people get those right. But most people miss all of these suited connected hands that are 3-bet bluffing. Notice, by the way, you're 3-betting a very different strategy from the big blind compared to the button. From the button, you're 3-betting very polarized with your best hands and some hands that are on the cusp of playability. Whereas in the big blind, you're 3-betting a bit more of a linear range and just hands that flop pretty well. So take a look at the differences here. Make sure you recognize them. Tip number 2 is you need to master short stacked poker. I realize you start off very deep stacked, but much of the tournament is played with 40 big blinds or shorter stacks. So you need to study these spots diligently. I hear so many people say the short stack poker is bingo. You look at your cards. If they're good, you put them in. And if not, you fold. You got to get lucky. Realize, though, that is a poor mindset and it's 100% inaccurate. Short stacked poker is not all in or fold. It is not bingo. There is a whole lot of play available. Make sure you consult the pokercoaching.com app for GTO preflop ranges, both deep stacked and, very importantly, shallow stacked, because you need to make sure you understand how to play these spots. I'm going to show you some GTO spots where you are in the big blind against a button raise. 12 big blinds deep, 15 big blinds deep, 20 big blinds deep, and then 25 big blinds deep. And I'll show you, you should actually have a very wide calling range. So here we are. Big blind versus a button 2 big blind raise. 12 big blinds deep, not very deep stacked at all. Notice in this spot, we're going all in with pocket queens and lower, almost every ace X offsuit, the best ace X suited, the weak king X suited, And then everything else that is playable calls. Notice all these suited hands opt to call. Aces and kings also slow plays, notably. Also, notice a lot of the offsuit hands do not call. 9-8 offsuit, 8-7 offsuit, 7-6 offsuit, etc. All of these hands are folding. You're going to find this pattern is somewhat consistent. As you get a little bit deeper, you actually get to play a little bit wider, just because of the range the initial 12 big blind raiser should have. But the all-in range, or the re-raising range, actually stays kind of consistent. It just gets a little bit tighter as you get deeper and deeper. So realize you should be calling a ton. 40% of hands in this spot call, which a lot of people do not do. They fold a lot of these hands, like Jack 7 offsuit, 10-8 offsuit, Jack 3 suited, 10-5 suited. But these hands are definitive calls. What a lot of people do wrong is instead they use a shove or fold strategy only, which I don't know why a lot of people think the only options are all in or fold. You got lied to. Hate to break it to you. Don't believe the lies. Would you rather play, I don't know what it is, 50% of hands profitably or 62% of hands profitably in this spot? 61%, 61.2%. I'm estimating here. You'd obviously rather play 61% of hands profitably instead of 50 or 40 or whatever the actual number is if you could only go all in or fold. We're playing no limit hold'em, not all in or fold hold'em. 15 big blinds deep. Notice, very similar strategy, except for you get to call a little bit wider. The queens and worse all shove. Ace-X offsuit mostly shoves. Good ace-X suited and low king-X suited shoves. And then all those other hands are calling. Notice you do get to call wider now in this scenario. All suited hands get to play. And a lot of junky offsuit hands get to play too. If you wanted to fold out Jack 5, Jack 4, 6-4 offsuit is probably fine. But everything else really does need to be in there calling and seeing a flop. We discuss how to play post-flop in these scenarios at pokercoaching.com in the tournament masterclass. You're going to find you don't just check fold every time you miss. That would also be a mistake. You're going to find you don't check shove every time you hit. Or with your draws, quite often you're putting in a check min raise off a 15 or 20 big blind stack, which feels a little dirty, but it's good, fundamentally sound poker. As you get deeper to 20 and 25 big blinds, now we're going to introduce a non-all-in 3-bet. So, in this scenario, 20 big blinds deep, against a 2 big blind raise from the button. When we're in the big blind, we're going to re-raise to something like 5.5 big blinds with our absolute best hands. Aces, kings, queens, ace-king suited, ace-jack suited, ace-10 suited. A few good suited connected hands. Jack 10, 10, 9, 9, 8, 8, 7 suited. And then a few total trash bluffs. Queen 2 offsuit, Jack 5 offsuit, Jack 4 offsuit, Jack 3 offsuit, and 10-7 offsuit. We re-raise these trashy hands, and when we get shoved on, we fold. When we re-raise the best hands, we get all of our money in really, really good. Notice we do see a similar shoving range. Pocket queens and worse, ace-X offsuit, a lot of those. Some of the best ace-X suited, and some of the medium king-X suited. 25 big blinds deep. Similar strategy, except for our small re-raise range gets a little bit wider, where ace-king offsuit 3-bet small for value, as does pocket jacks. Notice we have a lot more junky offsuit 3-bet bluffs, which is the whole smattering of them. And this is what you need to be doing. Ask yourself, if someone raises on the button, are you ever 3-betting the Jack 5 offsuit? Or the Queen 4 offsuit, or the King 3 offsuit? If I ran a poll right now, 95% of you have never 3-bet the King 3 offsuit from the big blind against a button raised 25 big blinds deep. And that's a mistake. And hopefully, you'll get in there and you'll battle every once in a while. I do realize all of these 3-bet bluffs are very low frequency, so what you can do is maybe you 3-bet the King 3 offsuit every time and the Queen 4 offsuit every time, and then you call all the other ones. That's probably reasonable enough. But you do need to make sure you are getting in there with bluffs. If you're not, you're leaving a ton of money on the table. Tip number 3 is to adjust to the payouts. We're discussing the bubble here. We'll discuss the final table in just a second. As a short stack on the payout bubble, or when you're getting kind of close to the bubble, pretty close to the bubble, your main priority is to get in the money. When you have a short stack, you're probably not going to win the tournament. Hate to break it to you. So a lot of your equity is going to come from collecting the min cash and then gambling and trying to win the tournament. Now, this doesn't mean you should sit there and completely blind out. There are going to be times where when it folds to you, you need to raise or shove. Or when someone raises, you need to shove over the top of them, especially if their range should be very wide. You are going to need to get in there and take some risk some portion of the time. But say you are on the bubble with 8 big blinds and there are 4 stacks with 2 big blinds, you should basically never go broke in this spot. One of those 2 big blinds needs to go broke before you do, and you need to collect the free bin cash. As a middle stack, you're going to want to, again, make a point to get in the money while applying small bits of pressure that do not risk your stack, ideally, to the short and middle stacks so that you can apply pressure to the players who are incentivized to get in the money as well. As the big stack, you want to be applying lots of aggression, but not necessarily all in. In a lot of scenarios, you can just put in a minimum raise pre-flop and everyone will fold, or maybe the big blind calls, then they check fold the flop. Or if someone raises, you can 3-bet them. Say they make it 2 big blinds, you can make it 5. And if they don't have anything, they're going to fold. Even if they have something pretty good, they're going to fold because they cannot risk playing a big pot on the bubble. So make sure you are using your stack adequately on the bubble. At a final table, as a short stack, you want to try to move up the payouts while also not just sitting there and completely blinding out. If you completely blind out, well, you're not going to win very often at all. As a middle stack, you want to avoid the big stack while also applying aggression again to the middle and short stacks who are incentivized to not go broke. And as the big stack, you will find that you may want to raise wider than normal and post-flop bet more often using small sizes. As the big stack, you get to make small bets that will essentially put your opponent's entire stacks at risk while you're not really risking very much at all. Let's take a look at a few scenarios. Here we have, in the cutoff, 30 big blinds deep, not at a final table on the left, and at the final table on the right. Hopefully that's the right directions for you. You can read. So with no payout implications, we can see the cutoff 30 big blinds deep should raise with 34% of hands. All of these hands here in red. However, with these stack configurations, hijack has 20 big blinds, cutoff has 30, the button, the big stack has 60, the small blind has 15, they're short, and the big blind has 44. Now, the player in the cutoff can only raise 29.5% of hands. Again, all these charts are at pokercoaching.com. Make sure you check it out. We have a whole bunch of charts for final table scenarios. Take a look at what is now not raising in this scenario. Notice some of the weaker ace-x offsuits folding, king 9, queen 9, some queen 10, and jack 10, as well as jack 10 and jack 9 are all folding. So a lot of these weaker offsuit hands are folding. And on top of that, some of the weaker suited connected hands and small pairs are folding. You're going to find, though, that the ace-x suited usually maintains a decent amount of its value. So those hands raise the majority of the time, even when you're at a final table, because when you have an ace in your hand, it makes it less likely that your opponents have an ace that can then re-raise or shove on you. But what I want to show you here is that you're raising essentially 5% fewer hands, which is actually a pretty big decrease proportionally out of the 34% range with no payout implications. What if the stacks were a little bit different? Here we have adjusted the stacks a little bit. Now we have a 60 big blind stack that folded. We're 30 in the cutoff. Button has 15, small blind has 45. That's a weak position for them. And the big blind has 20. Once the 60 big blind stack folds, now you actually get to raise a little bit wider. So notice all we've really done here is we've moved the big stack now to your left and they're out of the pot, and we gave the 45 big blind stack a worse position. Small blind versus big blind. Notice now, you get to min raise 32.6%. Again, this may not sound like that big of a difference from this 29% to this 32%, but it is. And recognizing all of these little adjustments you need to make is going to go a long way to ensuring you are playing well. If you consistently make mistakes before the flop, you're going to be making mistakes left and right because you have to make a decision if you're going to play or fold every single hand. So you need to make sure you are diligently studying these scenarios. And again, we have all these charts available at pokercoaching.com, and we have my tournament masterclass and the advanced tournament course where we go through all sorts of final table adjustments you should make. Tip number 4 is to not go on tilt. You will experience massive swings in tournaments. It's going to happen. Sometimes you're going to go from 1 big blind up to a ton. Sometimes you're going to go from a ton down to 1 big blind. All you can do is play each hand to the best of your ability. If you consistently play poorly after you get a bad beat, you have pretty much no chance for success. One time in a WSOP event, I was playing in one of the tournaments, a $1,500 tournament. Someone got moved to my table, and they had about 8 times average. They had a ton of chips. Okay, very first hand, this player got pocket aces. They got it all in against someone who had 9-7 suited for like 25 big blinds. Maybe they raise aces. The opponent shoved 9-7 suited, which is loose. They called with aces, and they lost. They were mad. They got on tilt. Now they're down to 7 times average. They still have a ton. This player proceeded to play every single pot for the next hour because they were mad. They were mad they got unlucky. This player played 8-2 offsuit, 7-2 offsuit. They didn't know to play Jack 4 offsuit. They played all sorts of trash. And they busted within an hour. This player was mad because they lost with aces. They were entitled. They thought that they were supposed to win, which obviously they're not supposed to win. You're supposed to lose some portion of the time. That's how math works. And, well, they lost. They had a great shot to make a deep run, and instead they just threw it all in the garbage. That is a mistake. Some people, whenever they get down to a short stack, they decide to give up. Not by blinding out, but they decide to give up by just ripping their stack in with all sorts of nonsense. And, well, they eventually get called and then they lose. You have to make sure that whenever things are not going well, that you sit there and play great poker. And if you do that consistently, you will thrive. I think this is one of the reasons I've actually done pretty well in tournaments throughout my entire career, because I don't throw away my stack when things go poorly, ever. If you don't throw away your stacks when things go poorly, well, like extra chances you have that your opponents do not. Tip number 5 is to be mentally sharp. Make sure that poker is your main priority, that you are thinking about and dealing with for the time that you are in the tournament. If you would rather be doing something else, if you're highly distracted, well, you probably want to go do that other thing. Try to turn off everything else in life, like work, like sporting events on TV, like anything that's taking your mind away from poker. You're going to find that if you are distracted, you will not pay attention to poker very well at all. And if you're not paying attention very well at all, you will not be able to adjust to the things that your opponents are doing incorrectly. Remember, you always want to exploit the things that your opponents are doing wrong. And if you're distracted by, let's say, a sporting event on TV, if the poker's here and you're looking over here, or you're looking over here, you're looking here and here and here and back and forth, well, you're not going to pay attention to poker. And then your edge is going to completely vanish. And if your edge vanishes, well, you might as well be doing anything else. So make sure that poker is your priority. Also, make sure that you do not party all night to the point that you're tired and lethargic on the next day. Make sure when you're playing poker, you're not having a party. Ideally, you're not sitting there having loads of drinks and being part of a circus. If you do that, and it's a carnival at the table, and you're having a party, you're probably not going to be paying all that much attention to poker. Now, I'm not saying sit there with your hoodie and your sunglasses and your headphones and you don't talk to anyone and you're super mean and stoic. That's no fun. Nobody likes that, and that might actually make the game more serious, which is bad for you. But at the same time, you need to pay attention to poker, and you need to not be distracted by anything that will make you not mentally sharp, because if you don't pay attention, your edge is going to vanish. That's it for today. 5 tips to help you run deep more often in tournaments. If you enjoyed this video, do me a quick favor before you leave, please. Click the like and subscribe button down below 5 times. Not 4, 5 times. Also, if you have a friend who's struggling to run deep, share this with them. Realize that there's variance in tournaments. Sometimes you're going to win, sometimes you're going to lose. But if you do these 5 things, you're setting yourself up to have a great chance for success. Thanks for watching, and I'll talk to you next time.